how cavemen actually survived. In 1994, workers digging through a coal mine in Schoningen, Germany hit something that shouldn't have survived the trip. Wooden spears, almost 2 meters long, still balanced and sharpened like javelins. Lying next to them were the butchered bones of more than 10 horses. Scientists ran the dating twice because the first number seemed impossible. These spears are around 200,000 years old, made by Neanderthals, hunting in coordinated groups, using weapons engineered for aerodynamics. Not sharpened sticks, actual weighted, balanced throwing weapons, the kind you'd have to design on purpose. For most of human history, caveman wasn't an insult. It was a 5 million-year engineering project with no instruction manual, no safety net, and predators that outweighed us 10 to 1. And somehow, we're still here. This is the real story of how early humans survived long enough for any of us to exist at all. The story starts about 2.6 million years ago in what's now Ethiopia, at a site called Gona. Early hominins there were doing something no animal on Earth had done before, smashing rocks together on purpose to make sharp edges. These are called Oldowan tools, and they're basically the first technology in the history of life. A sharp flake of stone meant you could cut through hide and tendon that your teeth couldn't touch. Suddenly, meat, bone marrow, and fat, some of the richest calories on the savannah, were on the menu. The next leap took over 1 million years, but it changed everything. Deep inside Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, researchers found burnt bones and ash more than 30 meters from the entrance, far past where a wildfire could ever reach. The evidence stretches back as far as 1.79 million years. That means early Homo erectus wasn't just stumbling onto fire and running from it. They were carrying embers into a cave, feeding them and keeping them alive on purpose. They probably couldn't make fire yet. They were borrowing it from lightning strikes and grass fires, but they understood something remarkable. Don't let it go out. Fire meant warmth in an ice age, protection from anything with claws, and eventually cooked food, which unlocked more energy from meat and roots than raw eating ever could. Some researchers think that cooking is one of the reasons our brains were able to grow as large as they did. You can't build a brain that burns 20% of your daily energy on raw roots alone, but fire and tools only solved part of the problem. The real killer wasn't hunger. It was the cold. As humans pushed north out of Africa into Ice Age Europe and Asia, they ran into temperatures the human body was never built for. And this is where something strange shows up in the evidence. Lice. Human head lice and human body lice are two different species, and body lice can only survive in clothing. By comparing how long ago their DNA split apart, geneticists estimated that humans started regularly wearing clothes somewhere around 170,000 years ago. Long before that, we find bone needles, some from Siberia, dated to roughly 45,000 to 50,000 years old, with eyes small enough to thread with sinew. That's not a hide draped over a shoulder, that's tailoring. Fitted clothing, sewn to the body, which is the difference between surviving a Siberian winter and not. And clothing and fire weren't just keeping individuals alive. They were part of something bigger, a safety net built out of other people. In 1957, archaeologists digging in Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq found the skeleton of a Neanderthal man who lived roughly 50,000 years ago. Researchers call him Shanidar 1. His body was a list of injuries that should have killed him young. A crushing blow to the skull that likely blinded him in one eye, a withered, partially amputated right arm, a leg injury that left him with a serious limp, and later in life, he went deaf. Every one of those injuries had healed. He didn't die from any of them. He lived into his 40s, which in a Neanderthal's world made him an old man. A deaf, half-blind, one-armed hunter-gatherer should not have lasted a season alone out there. He only made it that long because the people around him fed him, protected him, and kept him inside the group long after he stopped being useful in a hunt. Survival, it turns out, wasn't just about muscle and tools. It was about who was willing to carry you when you couldn't carry yourself. That same cooperation shows up in how people built shelter. In Mazirich, Ukraine, archaeologists uncovered the remains of huts built almost entirely from mammoth bones, more than 12,000 of them, in one settlement, stacked and arranged like a load-bearing skeleton, then likely covered in hide. Building one of those wasn't a one-person job. It took a group willing to haul, stack, and coordinate, probably over days just to build something to sleep in through the winter. Hunting worked the same way. At sites like Solutré in France, archaeologists found staggering piles of horse bones at the base of a cliff face, evidence that generations of hunters used the landscape itself as a weapon, driving herds toward a drop they couldn't see coming until it was too late. One person can't herd 100 horses off a cliff. It takes a plan, a group, and everyone sticking to their role. Which brings us back to those spears in Schoningen. Researchers now think some of them, especially the shorter, double-pointed sticks, weren't stabbing weapons at all. They were thrown, spinning through the air like a boomerang, possibly by multiple hunters at once, maybe even including children learning the technique on smaller game. That single detail rewrites the whole stereotype. This wasn't a lone brute swinging a club. It was families, teaching skills across generations, coordinating a hunt like a team. None of this survival came from any one breakthrough. It was fire kept alive in the dark, clothes stitched tight enough to survive a blizzard, a group willing to carry an injured man for years instead of leaving him behind, hunters trusting each other enough to run a herd toward a cliff they couldn't see. Every piece of it required something animals don't reliably do: thinking ahead and trusting the person next to you. The people who made those spears and shonen weren't trying to leave anything behind for us to find. They just needed to eat that winter, and they needed their kids to survive long enough to hunt their own. They didn't know they were laying down the first draft of everything that came after: tools, fire, clothing, shelter, and the simple, stubborn decision to look out for each other. 200,000 years later, that's still buried in the dirt in Germany. And in a way, it's still in us, too.